Hi, this is Elliot Eisenberg here to catch you up to date on the latest in residential sales data for the month of February. In Hillsborough County, single-fam home prices declined a slight 1.1%. That was the smallest decline across all three counties in both types of properties. Multifam prices fell a little more substantial, 6.5%. Sales activity slipped 9.8% for single-fam units and by 6.3% for multifam units, as they did across all three counties pretty much. Sales price as a percentage of list price rose in the single-fam case from 96.4% to 96.6% in Hillsborough County. That's the highest percentage of sales price as a function of list price, and the only situation where the sales price as a function of list price rose year over year. The multifam side in Hillsborough County, sales price as a percentage of list price fell to 94.9 from what it was a year ago at 97.1. Pending sales declined 0.7% for single fam and almost 18% for multifamily. Remember, multifamily can be much more volatile because of new buildings coming and going and so on and so forth. Lastly, inventory in months increased on the single family side from 2.6 months to 3.5 months, and on the multi-fam side from 3.4 months to 5.2 months. Clearly, the market is slowing, but very slowly and in a very controlled fashion. In Pasco County, single-fam home prices fell 5.6%. Multi-fam prices slid less, just 3.1%. Sales activity declined 13% for single family and almost 30% for multi. Remember, multifamily sales numbers can alter quite a bit because of new buildings opening and so on and so forth. Sales price as a function of list price declined for both single and multifamily. It declined to 95.6 for single family, and it slid to 96.2 for multi. That was the best multifam performance across all three counties at 96.2%. Pending sales activity increased for single-fam homes. That was the best performance across all three counties and both types of properties. And the only situation where it increased, it rose by 3.1%. Multi-fam pending sales activity declined 6.2%. Lastly, months of inventory increased from 2.7 to 3.6 for single-family and increased from 3.5 months to 3.9 months for multifamily. This market, like the other markets in this area, is weakening, but doing it very slowly and in a very controlled and slight fashion. In Pinellas County, single-fam home prices declined 1.5%. Multifam prices declined 2.1%. That was the best performance across all three counties for multifamily. Sales activity increased, up 10.4% for single family. That was the best performance across all three counties and both types of properties. And in terms of multifamily, it increased almost 1%. That was the best performance across all three counties for multifamily units. Sales price as a percentage of list price slid to 94.1 for multifamily and slid to a lower number, 92.9, a weak number for multifamily. Pending sales activity slid 2.8% for single family and almost 16% for multifamily. Lastly, inventory here increased like it did everywhere else in the three county area, from 3 months to 4.2 months in the last 12 months here for single family, and from 5.5 months a year ago to now a large 7.7 months. It's clearly a buyer's market in the multifamily market. This market, like the other counties, Hillsborough and Pasco, is also weakening, but generally doing it very, very slightly and also in a controlled way. Turning our attention to the national economy, GDP growth is clearly slowing. We've gone from almost 3% in Q3 of this year to about 2.5% in Q4. And now in the end of Q1, we're likely to get at best 1%. Interestingly enough, despite the fact that growth is slowing, unemployment remains quite flat in the low fours, currently at 4.1. And similarly, inflation has stalled out in the upper twos. The Fed wants it at 2, not 2.7, 2.8, where it is. This flat lining of both inflation and unemployment is causing the Fed to have the luxury of waiting on rate cuts at this point. It doesn't know what's going to happen. If unemployment goes up, they'll cut rates. If inflation rises, they certainly won't cut rates. They may raise rates. That's very, very unlikely. And there's also the effect of tariffs. President Trump has imposed tariffs. He's likely to impose more tariffs going forward. The Fed really wants to get a handle on what the tariffs will look like and how much the influence that they'll have on the economy before the Fed decides to cut rates. I expect the tariff impositions to lower growth and potentially increase inflation. That said, I suspect that the Fed will pay much more attention to the weakening of GDP and the likelihood that that will result in rising unemployment. And that's what's going to cause the Fed to cut rates. I expect the Fed to cut rates at least twice and possibly 3 times before the calendar year 25 is out, but I don't think they'll cut rates before the beginning of Q3. So long-term rates have declined. The 10-year Treasury's declined. The 30-year mortgage has declined some. But because of the tariffs and how big they'll be and how long they'll last and when they'll be imposed, there's a great deal of uncertainty, and that's holding the Fed back from cutting rates and doing what they otherwise would have done. If we look at the recession probabilities, I think that they've gone up. I think they've roughly doubled from about 15 to 20% to now somewhere around 35%. My base case is still not a recession, but I'm certainly paying more attention to it as we go forward.